Welcome back from the 35 minutes coffee break. I wondered why 35 minutes, and then I realized I'm in Spain, so it's pretty normal, I guess. Next on stage is Natalia, and she's on a mission. She's on a mission to explain us all about GraphQL, and she will include not only one, not only two, but many, many cats in her slides. So give a very loud and warm applause for Natalia.
Thank you. So I knew you were waiting for cats, and this is why I have them. And I'm going to tell you a story, okay? And I want you to take it seriously. But before you do, I want you to read this, let it sink in, and then I'll start, right? Back in the day, let's say a few months ago, somebody contacts me in LinkedIn, and they say, yeah, I see you're very much into volunteering, and you're very much into cats, and you're a front-end developer. Maybe you would like to help us with this venture we have. I'm like, okay, tell me more about it. He's like, I want you to take it seriously. This is like people with a lot of money are behind this. Our stakeholders are very, very serious business people. Like, yeah, well, definitely. He started getting me curious. You know, the cat in me as well was like thinking, what is this about? So what is your enterprise about, mister? It's like, well, we are in the business of sending kitten to space. Like, sending kitten to space. Okay. Can you tell me more about this? It's like, yeah, well, we are a community of people, very elite people. Like, we gathered together and we decided to have a platform where we're going to create a crowdfund, but only for us. And we're going to propose our own cats to be sent to space. I'm like, okay. Do you have any requirements since you're so serious about it? Yeah. We work with this design agency and we have a wireframe and everything. I'm like, okay. That's very, very detailed. Yeah, this is our homepage, and we're gonna have all the kitten here, and we're gonna have their image and their name, and then people of our community can see them and decide who they want to vouch for, who we're going to give money to. Say, okay, so since you have these teasers, you're going to be uploading the kitten information. You probably have a form as well. Of course, we have a form. This is our form. Like, the name and a submission button. Don't you think maybe you want a file upload, input something? No, we don't want to. But you said you want pictures in your homepage. Yeah, but you know how people are, he says. Like, then they start uploading the real cats' pictures. We don't want that. We end up with this. People don't get serious and they don't give money. I'm okay. Well, let's do this. I'll help you. So what exactly do we do next? He says, okay, we need to do a demo to demonstrate our stakeholders, our product, what we're going to implement. Okay, but there is a caveat to this. We want all the cats of the stakeholders to be in the homepage. Please remember, this is not to be matched to any serious case of business stakeholding, right? I said, okay, so how many stakeholders you have? Thousands. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm not going to hard code thousands of cats in a homepage. But yeah, I'll think of something and maybe we can talk next week. And he's like, no. The meeting with the business people is end of business today. okay, that didn't give me a lot of time, but I was already embarked in this mission, so let's do it. We need something to launch us fast into this mission. And of course, I knew I was going to use Angular. I can even, I don't know, create from the CLI a minimal implementation of it with the right flags. So I wasn't worried because I knew that I wanted to do something that scaled in the future. This was going to be from prototype to production. And with Angular, I have all that, right? But I also wanted some API to work with towards some database. And I wanted to implement it fast. And when I started thinking about endpoints and backends and servers and blah, 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 I'm a front-end developer. I don't do any of that. How can I get this running very quickly? And I came across, it was a few months ago, right? GraphQL. So what is GraphQL? It's a descriptive query language for APIs, and we're going to speak more about something being descriptive and typed. And it's also a runtime server-side for these queries that we're going to create with this API. And when I say server, yes, we need a server. And how do we quickly get one, and what does it for me? I know there are many out there, but for me, the typical implementation or the typical installation when I need a server, I will do it with Express. And for this particular case, because I was going to be using it with GraphQL, I needed these other two modules. So I had Express GraphQL, GraphQLs. And in this case, I implemented cores because, well, like I said, we need to get the closest to real, and this is how we're probably going to be querying things. So how do we configure this server? I'm going to move now to my computer and try to, oh, I said I always mess the setup, and I'm real about it. Okay. So let me go to the server here when I find it. And let's take a look at this. So way before we define our schema, we're going to, wait, sorry. We're going to go here and see how we get this running, right? So what is very important is that once we have defined the Express app, we're going to be using this Express GraphQL to enable the schema to define the root value for our resolvers or for our API entry points. And we're going to say that we want to use the GraphQL because that's a very, very useful interface or IDE to write our queries and make sure they work. Okay, so these get defined here. And in this case, well, I said I was using cores, but actually I made everything or allowed everything just to make sure that nothing went wrong in this demo. But then what interests us is this, the schema for our GraphQL validation. And when I say this API language is descriptive, it's because this is what you do. You describe types. They are all GraphQL object types. And through them, you get to run your queries. And if you see there, I have two types at the beginning. One is a query and one is a mutation. And those are very particular or special types of objects for the API language that describe, well, the queries you can think or map them to a GET request, for example, in the usual REST API implementations. And the mutations, anything that actually updates or changes data, like update or post or put or options. So we have these two types, and we also have here another type that is the kitten type. This is a custom type, and if you see here, it has fields. this is how they're called in GraphQL, that resolve to scalar types. Scalar types are part of the language, and how do we realize that it's scalar type is because it doesn't have any subtypes anymore. This is what our fields are going to resolve to. And GraphQL has 4. It has the string, the int, the float, and the Boolean. And then it also has the enum type, which allows you to create an array or a list of other types that you want to resolve your data to. And you, like said, you can write your own custom types. In this case, we have the kitten. And we also have this other definition here of input. And I'm going to explain you what it serves for when we go to a mutation. So OK, now we have it. We can go back to the presentation. We get the server running. And we're going to be installing Apollo. When I did this presentation a few months ago, some people were telling me Apollo is not the most performant module. I'm going to have to admit that I haven't checked any other, that I invite you to see what kind of performance implications it has. But what I can say is that it is very, very convenient to use. Why? Because it uses the same syntax exactly as GraphQL defines. So you don't have to learn anything else on top. You don't have to proxy anything. This does all the proxying for you. OK. We can install it with schematics. We can ng-add Apollo Angular. And that's it. You have it already available. What you have to be careful is that it creates a new module for you. And then anything else you create via schematics, you are going to have to make sure that you are hooking to the right module. So how do we query data from the server which has created? I don't have a database. I'm going to show you now. I have just a simple JSON, and I'm writing to it with Node. But let's suppose we have a MongoDB, or we can have any other type of database in the backend. And we want to query data from it. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to show you real time. For the sake of brevity, I already have my server running. So this is a mutation, and this is not what I want. I want to have the query. Let me get there. I'm going to get it from my service. I wrote a service to connect to this API. And I'm going to copy this query. And I'm going to paste it to the GraphQL. I'm going to run it. And boom, I'm going to get all the data. And what is interesting is that I'm querying this JSON that I have in the backend. But you see, I only get this ID and name, right? Even though that if you see my JSON over here, I have another field, which is called mission. But it's not coming back. It's not coming back because I'm not querying for it. And this is an interesting point about GraphQL. It's super simple, but also very predictable. What you want is what you get. So if you define in your type that you want to get only these 2 fields and resolve this data, this is what you're going to get back. OK? And this is what we get, exactly what we get here. And we can see it in the network. Let's run it again. So we know now the operation name. And we're going to see it in code. The operation name is all kitten. And we are querying the all kitten with a kitten's alias. Because obviously, if you can query the same kind of data and get different fields as results, you're going to have to maybe alias every one of the requests or queries to this information. And you see in the response that, so in the preview that is more visible, that you only get the two fields that you have defined in your type, your ID and your name. Okay. What happens when you want to put data in your API or in your database through your API? This we discussed. So this is called mutation, like we said before. It's a special type that is used to post information to the database. And in this case, we can see, if we see the anatomy of a mutation, we can see that we also, just like in Angular, we have a type that we want returned. And we also pass some arguments or variables. We're going to see them also in the network tab. And we also pass the operation name and the fields that we want to get the data updated. And why am I passing here an input and not the actual fields I want? This is what we are used to in JavaScript, for example. We want to get some particular data, and we pass the names. But in GraphQL, is best practice to put all that together into an input. So instead of passing them one by one, because you potentially have dozens of them, you just create an input type, you pass it as the argument, and then you get returned what you want. And then you can have different inputs. You can make many combinations and get different data, again, from the same particular object with a different alias. So before we go to the requesting of images, I would like to say that there are many more things to GraphQL. Let's, for example, explain the resolving. And well, here, as we are here, we can already see the input type is here, the one that we passed. But it's important to notice that we can define some fields as non-nullable, for example. We can tell the API, please don't ever return a null here, and if there is a null or there is no value, just give me an error so I can work with that. For example, if you wanted to make this here, this value precisely is non-nullable. If you wanted to make this hidden ID non-nullable, you just add the exclamation mark here, or you can do it here for this array. You can say, okay, if you put it here, it means that the object may be null, but the fields may not be null. And if you put it outside, you say like, okay, one of the objects in this list may be null, but none of the information inside or the fields can be null. Okay, and we can see that also working. Let's see it working. Let's send a cat to space. So we see here we have, let me see how many. We have 8 cats. And let's add another one. Let's add, Michael, give me your cat's name. Not working?
My cat's name is Sebastian.
Okay, Sebastian. Let's see you go through the wires of the internet. Okay. Let's make this smaller. Okay, we have now the options, the request. We have created Sebastian. He's over here. We can see in the headers payload that we pass the input, but this input obviously maps over here to the ID and the name, Sebastian. And is Sebastian now in our roster? Yes, Sebastian is over here. If I would have seen you with that wig, I would have made a picture of you like this, but next time, yeah. Okay, what happens when we have thousands of cats and we have them in the homepage? Do we want to do this for performance reasons? We don't. Obviously, that is not the only thing we want to do to improve performance. There are so many things. We already know for years on end that we don't need to do like putting render block in JavaScript at the top of the page and many other things. But obviously assets, media assets, especially when they are created by the users, can have all kind of dimensions. And if you don't have a proper system like, I don't know, what is this very popular service right now, Cloudinary or something like this, that processes these images and optimizes them for the internet in the middle of the upload, then obviously you need to, and even when you do, you may want to implement lazy loading for this type of assets. I know some of you are going to tell me that right now there is a loading attribute for images and iframes that recently came out, and there's been a lot of like uproar in the internet about it, but this is not really well supported yet. So it's only available in, let me show you the, can I use? It's only available in Internet, sorry, in Internet Explorer, I wish, in Chrome, in Chrome, in Chrome 76, and yes, for Android browsers, and that's mostly it. And it says 60% of the quota, but I was a bit confused when I was reading this data before. I thought it was 60% of the whole browser, but it's the usage of the browser. So the actual number is a lot lower. So yes, when that is out and is supported by many browsers and we can have a decent cross-browser support schema, then obviously go for it. But for now, I think the best way to lazy load assets is to use the intersectional server. Because then if the user never gets to a certain point of the viewport, the asset never gets requested. And this is what you want, right? If they don't need it, if they don't want it, if it's not there, don't send it to them, right? So let's go back a bit and see that, yes, the intersectional server is a native API in the browsers and only makes a request to, or no, it doesn't make any request, I'm sorry. What it does is it tells you where the user is at every time, and you can use this information to make a request, for example, for data. So let's change our JSON to make it a bit more, a bit bigger and have more cats. And let's hope that the server doesn't break. Okay. And we will see also here in the network. Let's delete this. And maybe put image. Okay. Maybe, maybe this is not working really because there is a missing image. Let me go to the console log. Oh, I think I may have broken the demo at some point when I was changing the name of the cat. But yeah, okay, it's fine. Maybe we can fix it together. So let's see where this is working. So we have the cat teaser here, and we are implementing this data attribute where we pass the URL prefix and the kitten name and the URL suffix, and we say, okay, intersectional server, please create a subscription and observe this point. And for each one of these entries, when it's crossing the browser and it's crossing the beam where the intersectional server is at, replace this data attribute value by the image source value. And with that, you are meant to, what is interesting is that I don't have any errors here, but I see I have an error here. Maybe it doesn't like Sebastian, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's cached. We can restart the server. We can maybe even try it to stop this and restart it. And maybe it works afterward. You know, caching is also a thing. Caching is also a way to get better at serving more performant websites. Okay, we're loading. Let's see what happens now. Okay. Too bad, it has a 404 here. I'm sure, oh, okay, probably there is some cat here that doesn't exist in the images. But I don't know which one. Let's see now. Sorry. Still error. Yeah, 404, what is it requesting for? Kit and PNG. I don't know what's going on. Danny. Sebastian is gone, so he's not the culprit. I cannot. It's not you. It's not you. Okay. Well. I don't know what is this or where this is coming from. So maybe we pass now to the last part, and then I'll try to fix it again. So as you can see, this is responsive. This is another thing that's been around for a while. But people tend to sometimes overuse certain libraries that, in my opinion, very much pollute both the DOM and make the experience not so performant for the user. So this is not a critique to the developers of all these libraries. They do a super awesome job, and they are in production in many sites. But when you have a minimal implementation like this one, think about if you need a library or an additional library, because you can do stuff like this right now with the tools that are very, very much supported, not like loading, but in the case of CSS Grid, it has a great level of support that you can see here, and except for Opera Mini, who uses that, right? And here in Internet Explorer 11, you need to, well, there is a special syntax you need to implement in order to make it work, but it does work in the end. So basically, think about it. I have all this in a repo, and my repo for sure is working because I checked it. I'm going to pass you the URLs, and you can download it or fork it from Git, and then test it yourself, and you're going to see the intersectional server working as well. And you're going to have also this mixing that makes this grid layout possible. So yes, this is it. I'm sorry I couldn't show the intersectional server this time. It's also online. I'll also post it in Twitter, so you can see the video and you can see it working. But yes, we made the prototype on time for the EOB, and thank you very much for your attention.